Welcome back to those who have stayed, and welcome to those that are just joining us. We are on to our last big topic of this morning for the diversity and inclusion track. It's been absolutely fascinating. We've had some fantastic speakers all the way through, and it doesn't stop yet because we've got another 5 for you lined up now. From diversity to inclusion, integrating marginalized groups in tourism products. Well, what's it all going to mean and what's it all going to mean? I am delighted to be joined by Katharina and Yara of Roundtable Human Rights in Tourism, and a wonderful panel. And the panel will discuss the crucial role to the tourism industry in fostering diversity and inclusion from various perspectives. There will be plenty to talk about. And this session will also showcase necessary steps and practical actions to promote inclusivity for marginalized groups in tourism destinations and in our supply chain. First off, we are going to hear from Yara, who is going to set the scene for us, and then I will invite Katharina, I should say, and her panel for this larger panel conversation. Yara, you are ready and mic'd up, so I will allow you to get on the stage and take it off for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Dear Charlotte, thank you for the introduction. Dear guests, welcome to our panel, From Diversity to Inclusion, How to Include Marginalized Groups into Tourism Products. My name is Yara Schreiber. I'm the coordinator of the Roundtable Human Rights in Tourism. We are a multi-stakeholder initiative to work on human rights due diligence in tourism, with tourism businesses in the supply chain, and we open up space to discuss and exchange with various stakeholder groups and experts, and work with our members from various stakeholder groups on very practical, demand-oriented on how to implement human rights due diligence in tourism products in the value chain. We have, for example, published several implementation guidelines. We have conducted a joint human rights impact assessment and developed several tools on our website to assess human rights risks in the own value chain. People make tourism possible, and the question is, today in our panel, how can it include all of them and benefit all of them? With our panel, we want to delve into the core of sustainable tourism, how to foster meaningful engagement for all stakeholders, including those frequently marginalized or overlooked. And we all know that tourism can have positive impacts in the value chain for all or many stakeholders, but at the same time, some actors often receive more benefits than others. Before we dive into the practicalities with our esteemed panelists, I would like to once more briefly break down the buzzwords: diversity, equity, inclusion, and marginalization, and show its connection to human rights. So diversity is asking who is in the room, who is presented in the workforce or in a tourism product. It's the presence of differences within a given context, such as an organization or a tour operator. And it is about respecting and valuing differences of identities and characteristics, such as gender, race, or sexual orientation. Equity is asking who is trying to get in the room but can't. It means to recognize historical and systemic barriers and disadvantages for specific groups or persons, and that not everyone starts from the same place. So it means to adjust treatment accordingly to ensure everyone can participate. And inclusion is about, as soon as everyone is in the room, it is asking, have everyone's ideas been heard? So it means creating safe spaces and bringing traditionally excluded individuals or groups into processes, into activities, into shared decision-making. It is a level of empowerment and participations that individuals have within a given setting. So it's not a natural consequence of diversity, because having diverse people in the room is not meaning automatically that all voices are heard. So we need to address diversity, equity, and inclusion together, and only an integrated approach really ensures representation and fosters equal opportunity and outcomes for all stakeholders in tourism. How is this connected to human rights? All the concepts, diversity, equity, inclusion, have a clear basis in human rights, and this is reflected in international frameworks, such as the Declaration of Human Rights, that states, among other things, that all human beings are born free and equal and have rights without distinction of any kind. It is stated in the UN Guiding Principles on Business and Human Rights that set expectations for businesses to act on human rights, including those related to diversity, equity, inclusion. And also existing supply chain laws, such as the German Supply Chain Act or the UK Modern Slavery Act, are explicitly naming topics like fair and equal treatment and non-discrimination of employees and stakeholders. Looking at the SDGs, the UN Sustainable Development Goals, they also have, are explicitly grounded in human rights. And addressing diversity, equity, and inclusion targets a number of the SDGs, primarily SDG 5 on achieving gender equality, SDG 8 on decent work, and equal pay for all women and men, and SDG 10 on promoting the social, economic, and political inclusion for all and ensuring equal opportunity. So acting with human rights due diligence means really proactively integrating diversity, equity, and inclusion in tourism activities. Marginalized people and groups need a special focus. They often face multiple social, economic, and political disadvantages due to various characteristics such as race, ethnicity, gender, class, disability, age, etc. And marginalization is always influenced by historical, political, and cultural dimensions. So who is considered marginalized is not a fixed status. It is reflecting complex realities of disempowerment that depend on various factors, including political response, but also the level of civic freedom and the scope of action of civil society. And tourism is always connected to the political and cultural conditions and developments in a destination. Thus, also marginalized people and are directly and indirectly contributing to and impacted by tourism products. And in this session, we want to explicitly illustrate how marginalized groups might be ethically and beneficially included in tourism. We want to discuss how tourism businesses can improve the terms for individuals and groups to participate in societies where their rights are limited. So before I give the floor to the esteemed panelists, I want to invite you to join our network, to collaborate for diverse and inclusive tourism development. And if you want to exchange more and get to know us, we are in Hall 4.1 at stall 201. And with this, I'm handing over, and thank you very much for the attention.
Thank you, Yara. Thank you. What a fantastic way to kick off this particular session. It gives me, in order, I will announce the speakers. So I'm going to get Katharina to the stage first. Of course, she's Yara's colleague at Roundtable Human Rights in Tourism. And next to the stage, please, may I have Jenny Pocarel, who is founder and CEO of Sasan. And next, it's Michelle Mason, who's responsible recruitment program manager. It's quite a lot to read read here, Michelle. Sustainable Hospitality Alliance UK. Please take a seat, Michelle. And last but not least is the lovely Neha Arora, who is founder of Planet Abled. These ladies are all going to be in good hands with Katharina. And may I just remind everyone that this is a full female panel here at ITB Berlin. So we're moving the goalposts. Take it away, ladies.
Thank you so much, Charlotte. Thank you, Yara, for setting the scene and for that illuminating introduction to our session today. Esteemed guests and participants, a warm welcome also from my side. My name is Katharina Stechel. I am the program manager of the Roundtable Human Rights in Turin, and I'm absolutely honored and thrilled to be your moderator for the session today. I sincerely thank ITB Berlin for giving us that stage and bringing our topics such as human rights to the big stage. I think that is quite important. Our discussions today are particularly timely, considering the evolving frameworks, legal frameworks, such as an enforced human rights due diligence legislation in Germany and also the proposed EU legislation. And these frameworks definitely underscore the imperative for meaningful stakeholder engagement. And they make this conversation crucial for the future of responsible tourism. Because let us make that very clear. It's not about just following a law. Respecting people and respecting their rights is something that is absolutely necessary for the future of our sector. As Yara said, people make tourism possible. Our panelists today bring a wealth of experience and perspective to the table, presenting different phases of the tourism ecosystem, and we'll delve into their perspective and how to foster meaningful engagement with marginalized groups. I know that the topic might raise one or the other question, and as we don't have the time to answer them during the panel, that you all be ensured that all of our panelists are going to stay with us for like a half an hour or 35 minutes. So if you have any questions after the panel, we're going to be here at the side of the stage, and we warmly invite you to engage in a discussion with us. So let's get started. And I want to kick off with my first question that actually goes to all of you. And maybe, Jenny, as you're sitting directly next to me, I'll start with you as soon as I might have my questions right. So we want to kick off things positively. So can you share a concrete experience, a perspective, or an example on including marginalized groups within destinations in the context of your work?
Thank you so much for your question. Actually, Sasani works with female human trafficking survivors. We work as a both for-profit and non-profit business model. What the non-profit does is we rescue the trafficking survivors, female survivors from different countries, and we give them psychological aid, and when they are ready, we train them to become certified tour and trekking guides, and also hospitality and culinary experts, so that through the means of tourism, we can transform lives of these survivors who are devastated, had a terrible past, and we say that they have sold their soul, so it's very hard to recover from that trauma. So what we do is, through our foundation, we try to make sure that these survivors are transformed through the means of tourism. And in the third world country like Nepal, where females are not heard, they belong to a very vulnerable field. So our foundation, through the means of tourism, we try to give them hope, bring smiles to their faces, and not just that, we reintegrate them back with their families as well. We make them economically empowered and give them sustainable employment opportunities so that they become confident and also can support their families and live a happy life.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Jenny. I directly continue with Michelle. You are Ethical Recruitment Manager of the Sustainable Hospitality Alliance that probably most of you know, one of the most important sustainability organizations in the hospitality sector. And you have more than 20 years of experience in management, specializing in recruitment. So you must have heard a lot of good practice examples. So maybe you can share one.
I'm going to speak as in this role as the HR professional and recruitment expert.
Michelle, I think you need to hold your mic.
Sorry, can you all hear me now? Sorry about that. My aim when I walk into an organisation is to look and see who are there, what are the voices that are missing, how can we affect and impact change? And as part of the Sustainable Hospitality Alliance and the journey to net positivity, it's very clear on how to work with marginalised communities to impact change and make a difference within their lives. And also to listen to the teams that we worked with and look at where do the marginalised communities sit within our teams and how did they get there over all the adversity and the hurdles that they've experienced. And what can we do as human resource professionals and recruitment experts to kind of affect this. And I'll go into more detail later in relation to the steps we can take to really impact change and make a difference within the organisations that we work with and also other areas as well.
Neha, I'll give the floor to you. So you have with Planet A built a specialized travel brand promoting inclusive travel for people with disabilities and the elderly. So you also have a lot of experience with guiding, consultation, and standardization of destinations, of other organizations. So what is your good story that you'd like to share?
I would say when we design for persons with disabilities, we actually create a better experience, not just for persons with disabilities, but for everyone. So that is the whole idea. If you mainstream accessibility and inclusion into tourism frameworks, practices, and ecosystems, it is creating an inclusive experience for everyone. And just giving an example, so when we started in the early days, the whole focus was doing inclusive trips where we mix people with and without disabilities to travel together. Like, you know, a blind person, a deaf person, a wheelchair user, and a non-disabled person traveling together. And this creates ripples about inclusion beyond tourism ecosystems because people without disabilities realize, oh, this person is just like me. And they just happen to have a disability. And there is cross-disability awareness. I mean, blind person would realize my challenge is not bigger. It's the challenge of the deaf person also, which is equitable to me. Or the challenge of a person with autism or a person who is a wheelchair user. So everyone's challenges are equitable and relevant. So this needs to trickle down into tourism ecosystems and practices that you don't need separate mechanisms or separate companies for disabled people in the first place. It has to be mainstream. Like just one example, Hyatt Hotels recently launched text-based room service. I don't know if they had accessibility in mind, but it works great for deaf guests at a hotel.
Yeah, absolutely. I think in general, the concept of having more inclusivity within your day-to-day routine and seeing people with disabilities is a key concept also for our daily lives. I remember there was a German commercial where there was a person in a wheelchair saying, have you ever thought about that not my wheelchair is the problem, but the stairs and the missing elevator? So I think this is a concept that we anyhow need to integrate also in our day-to-day life. And Neha, maybe if I continue with you, how can locals with disabilities within destinations be more and even a better part of the tourism and also the demand chain? What steps should be taken first? What would you consult destinations to?
So for destinations, I think the point to start is to evaluate where you are first. I mean, how inclusive you are in the first place at the moment. And then assign champions, like each vertical or a business should have an internal champion within themselves who is driving inclusion. And hire persons with disabilities in the leadership team because then they become the internal champions to drive that message along. You don't need to hire consultants to do that. And skill development and training right from the CXO level till the bottom of the chain, that everyone is aware what inclusion and accessibility really is, and they are internally championing the cause. Mapping job roles and services, what persons with what type of disabilities can actually do a job better. Like a deaf person could be a great person in a restaurant taking orders, for that matter. Or the CEO could be in a wheelchair. We need to map these kind of job roles with people.
Yeah.
And impact metrics, I think, is the most important. So if you have an action plan and you implement it, you need to track those impact metrics and see the ROI, because no business or no destination works without monitoring the impact and the ROI of it.
Absolutely. I think that old phrase comes to mind, that you cannot tackle what you don't measure. And Jenny, maybe I continue with you, as you work with a very sensitive group, with girls and women that have been suffering from human trafficking. So it is quite important to know how and why people are pushed to the margins of society, and to really understand their needs to be able to support them. So in your case, every survivor comes with a totally different story, and every story is unique and empowering. Also, you also need to include them into the decision-making process. So maybe you can explain a little how you've done that with Sazane.
Actually, first of all, it's very time-consuming. It's not something that happens very quickly. You need to be really patient, because dealing with survivors is never easy. So we make sure that they are constantly heard. Like, you need to hear what they have to say, what are their requirements, what they want from us, how we can help. We make sure that we are with them and we hear them all the time. Not just that, we also have them in advisory boards. So in designing any products or any strategies, we make sure that they are constantly in the loop. They are there to share their part of important things, what they want to include. And we also make sure to do advocacy, like with the government officials, because in Nepal, everything depends on the law. There's law for like everything, and you need to be under that. So we make sure there is advocacy, needful advocacy, where we speak about the requirements of survivors, the challenges they have to go through, and how their privacy and confidentiality is constantly hampered, and what kind of challenges they have to go through, the economic disparities, the problems. So we also make sure we have clear strategies, advocacy tools, models. We also do assessment studies. Whenever we design our products, there is assessment study that we conduct, that where there should be trekking, which community is prone to trafficking, or the school dropout rates. So we study that where the trips should happen, to make tourism as a tool to not just empower the survivors, but also help the communities to get out of poverty. So this way we try to make sure that the stories of the survivors are heard.
Okay, so I think we have our first very important key statement here, to know that dialogue is definitely a key factor. But yeah, to be honest, especially for the tour operators among you, and maybe also the people who come from destination management organization, this might seem like a lot of work. And that might also raise the question, is that worth it? And how and why should we do it? So Michelle, you have so much experience within recruitment, and we all know that like hard facts and figures can be more persuasive than just good intentions. So can you give us some convincing figures from your knowledge, why we should include people with different backgrounds, and why that is profitable for companies?
Right, I'm going to read some stats and figures. So we've got the research conducted by Forbes on diverse companies that are 1.7% more likely to have innovative leaders when they have diversity and work with marginalised communities. Also, the most recent Kingsley report, Delivering Through Diversity, found that corporations that embrace gender and diversity in their executive teams were competitive and 21% more likely to experience above average profitability. All the facts and figures tell us, I'm going to stop there with facts and figures, that financially, diverse companies outperform their competitors. And I've yet to find any information that says any different. So why isn't this happening? Is the question that I put back to everybody to reflect on. If we measure diversity by impact and profitability only, we're on quite a slippery slope. There are other factors that need to be equally as important when we look at sustainable development and we look at inclusivity. We need to take a multifaceted approach. We need to work with local communities, NGOs. We need to see how can we make a difference. And also we need to reflect and look at our organisations. When I look at some of the businesses that I've worked into when we start talking about diversity and inclusivity, there's always somebody that has been from a marginalised community that has risen above the ranks and has sat towards the glass ceiling. Nobody takes the time to ask them, how did you get there? What have you overcome to get there? Once we start listening to that voice, then we can start looking at the challenges of others and what we can do as business owners, tour operators, to really make the difference and to support others to move forward, to be able to be more inclusive in what we do as organisations.
So it's not only engaging in a dialogue, but it's also then listening to what people are actually telling you. That is definitely the next necessary step. Neha, you are also, like Jenny, a founder, and with your travel brand, Planet Abled, it's for elderly and for people with disabilities. And I heard you say that you claim that 1.3 billion people with disabilities, and I think around 1 billion older people have consolidated disposable income of over 1.3 trillion US dollar annually. So that is definitely a market. And how can destination and locals profit from this enormous market value, to stay with the facts and the figures?
So I think first, to start with, we need to move from compliance, which whosoever is doing actually accessibility is doing out of compliance. We have to make it an aspiration that this is a business opportunity and we want to do it. Because then you will do more than what is just expected out of you as a business. And so we did Planet Able did a stakeholder consultation last year at the United Nations Vienna, and the finding was that what a destination or a business perceives to be accessible and what a disabled traveler is actually expecting, there's a huge gap in between that, because whatever product or service is being developed is not keeping the customer in mind. It is more of a compliance thing. They have to go over the wheelchair accessibility perception. So any one of you who is out there, if we talk about accessibility, you might be thinking a wheelchair. Quick fact, only 12% of disabled people are wheelchair users. The rest, 88 to 90%, have other types of disabilities, and their accessibility needs are completely different. So until and unless you design for them as well, across the spectrum of not just built environment like a ramp or a toilet, but look at your digital accessibility. Look at your information accessibility, your communication accessibility, your human accessibility for that matter. I mean, can a disabled person, for that matter, go to your website and find the information about the services and products that you offer? Like less than 10% of hotels list even on their websites that they have a wheelchair accessible room. And sorry to say, but none of them has really accessible room for other kinds of disabilities. Very minuscule number. So if you're not sharing that information, if your website is not accessible for a blind person to even go and make a booking, then like this is the least you can do to start off that taking advantage of that market. Then you have to look at, build an inclusion policy around it, what are the goals, and identify the impact metrics, again, because you need to monitor what is the return of investment that you do in accessibility, and what is the profit that you build out of it. Training from top to bottom, which I mentioned earlier as well, and a constant customer feedback loop. If a guest is ever coming and staying with you, first they should be able to find you. If they have been able to find you, then you have a customer feedback loop that what was their experience? Were they happy with the interventions and the features that you inculcated in your products and services? And if there is scope for improvement, go ahead and do that, because it's a journey. I mean, you don't just finish a project and accessibility is done. You have to keep on evolving and getting better. And tell the world about it, that you have done some work in accessibility. I mean, social media and online channels are good enough.
Yeah, everything that you already said, I think, kind of connects all the dots that we're just talking about, right? Because if people with disabilities are also more visible in our day-to-day life and also within tourism, that also helps you to go on that path of thinking about it. As soon as you've experienced something yourself, because you've been traveling with a person with a certain disability, or you've been just witnessing a person with a certain disability struggling with something, that also helps you as a tour operator, but also as a person with whatever type of business you have, to say, I saw that person struggle, and probably there would be a really easy way to fix that without any big solution that require big technology or whatever. And maybe we go back to Nepal for one point. So Jenny, beyond the social impact that you of course have with your organization, how does including marginalized groups and communities, especially women in your case, have also economic benefits in the area where you operate?
Nowadays, women prefer to travel alone. There are requirements that single women, students, teenage groups would want to travel in all girls trips or solo women, and they want security. They want comfort. They want guides with whom they can not just understand about the country, but also share friendly relationships, understand stories, be motivated. So I think that's where Sasane and our girls come to play. Like we can provide a very safe, secured itinerary or plan a very good, informative, and friendly trips for single women or students, teachers, professors who not just want to travel to Nepal for leisure, but also understand the social cause, understand the problems of women, like what we go through to see changes or to achieve any objective we have in life, understand the causes behind that, and also contribute to the transformation of these women. Like you not just see the unique cultures of Nepal, but also contribute to transforming life of a human being, which is really a huge thing. Like you give hope to these women who have lost hope. So economically, right now with sustainability approaches, responsible tourism, trips for women, trips for girls, our girls, or Sasani sisters, we call them sisters, play a huge role. And we are really heard of and really supported by nowadays. And I think that's where this cause and the survivors into action gives economic hope as well to the sisters.
That makes absolutely sense, Jenny. And so, Michelle, everything that we've just heard sounds so obvious. So, well, diverse teams work better, we have a clear economic case. So why is it then so difficult? Why is it so difficult to integrate marginalized people into recruitment, into procurement processes, and where do you see the hurdles, and how can we maybe tackle them?
Right, there's two angles for this. You've got the whole systemic barriers, you've got structural inequalities, you've got sort of unconscious biases. It's also about what does our recruitment strategy look like? How are we reaching out to these communities? Are we embedding our business within the local communities and working with them to say, we've got this job, we would like to advertise it. What works within this community? You know, so that you can get a clear sense of A, what they need, and B, how can I, as a recruiter, work with organisations to get the best from them? You know, we need to look at the financial hurdles and the lack of access to education. As the Alliance, we do an employability programme, which we roll out with local community providers that not only provides education and work experience, it also leads to jobs within the hospitality industry. We also look at resistance to change. Organisations, when we start talking about inclusivity and diversity, it's the morally right thing to do, but it doesn't always mean that organisations really want to come on that journey with us. So it's about constantly having to have a champion who can put forward strong business case arguments that will make a difference and impact change within your organisation. It's about training managers to build awareness in. It's about training everybody inclusive and also having a safe space where employees can provide you with feedback around what your business is like and how they feel and do they feel included within it. And that word spreads. If you're one of the strategies that I've adopted when I work in different organisations is, if we're a really good employer, you'll refer your friend to come and join us. And that starts a programme of developing good relationships with your local communities.
And we also see that if we look at statistics, right, especially Generation Z, for example, clearly states that working for an employer that is into sustainability topics, also into social responsibility, is definitely something that is rising dramatically in a younger generation. So especially in a sector that is suffering as tourism from a lack of professional workforce, it is kind of a crucial topic, and it is also a clear business case for the topics that we're just talking about. We're almost out of time, so I think we're going to do our last round, and we'll give each of you at least, maybe like 30 seconds to 1 minute for having a final tip. And Neha, I start with you. What practical steps would you recommend? Is there any first step for destinations or also tour operators that you worked with? How should they start to go on that journey?
I think they should start with the intention of doing it, that they want to do it. I think that's a good place to start. But you have to look at, there are already some good examples across the world. It's not that nothing is being done. It is being done, but there is no replicability. People are not talking to each other and learning from each other. I think what is important is find your community online, across the world. Find the good solutions that already exist. Learn from them, replicate them, collaborate with them, and, learn from the challenges that other organizations or companies have faced, and learn from their good examples of the practices that they have implemented. Make it part of the sustainable tourism conversation. Accessibility actually impacts 6 sustainable development goals. If you haven't mapped it yet, it's 6 SDGs. And if you are not doing accessibility, you are not meeting those goals at all. So I think we all should work together, learn from each other, and start with the intention of doing that. That's what I would say.
I totally agree, and I think that's also another key takeaway for all of you. You definitely don't need to do this alone. There is already a lot of initiatives out there. We already have here 3 wonderful women that are representing organizations that specifically deal with these issues. the Roundtable as well has a lot of tools and guidance. Just go on our website and you already find some help tackling these topics from the beginning if you don't know how to start. There is help out there. Michelle, also the Sustainable Hospitality Alliance, has a lot of offers, a lot of trainings, and you yourself also have a lot of experience with this multi-stakeholder approach. So what would you say, in very easy to answer in 30 seconds,
In 30 seconds.
what is necessary to include stakeholders better?
It is about fostering collaboration, promoting representation, especially with your leadership team. Look at your leadership and think, how diverse and inclusive is it? Provide opportunities. If you're looking about making your workplace more inclusive, the Alliance has a lot of free open resource tools that are available and to help people on their journey when we're thinking about net positivity and the pathway to action. And these tools are open to anybody to log on and use. Sorry.
I mean, I only gave you these 30 seconds, so it's definitely on me. And Jenny will end with you. So you are an SME tour operator yourself, and we in our work realize very often that especially small and medium-sized tour operators think, but what can I do? I mean, I'm just a small tour operator. I just have, 3 people working for me. So do I really have any power? And I think your story definitely shows that you do. So what advice would you give other SME tour operators when they want to embark on that journey?
SMEs are the ones who work in the ground. We are the ones who know the actual experience you can get from there, the problems that you contribute to. So what I suggest is never underestimate the power you have, because you have the ground knowledge, and to also the travelers and to the bigger companies while choosing for your products or while planning your trips. When possible, choose the small organizations or the small companies, because they can suggest you unique itineraries, unique products, because they are the ones who work in the ground. They are the ones who hear their people out. And when traveling, try to travel for a cause, not just understand the culture, but also contribute to a wider impact of transforming somebody's life, bringing smile to somebody, giving hope to someone. So yes, tourism is very powerful. Make use of that and contribute to a cause.
So yeah, you really took us on that journey that we took now for the last 45 minutes, from diversity to inclusion. We illuminated that with some real case examples, with practical strategies, and also with a shared commitment. I again like to invite you to join us off stage if you have any questions for the participants. And as we conclude this discussion, I'd like to leave you with a few key takeaways. So inclusivity is a journey. We've heard that. It's not a one-size-fits-all solution. It's dynamic, it's ongoing, and it requires collaboration, empathy, and also dedication. We heard about the importance of human rights in tourism. They underscore this integral connection that we have between diversity, equity, inclusion, and also human rights. You, as our panelists, have generously shared the practical approaches and also showed that inclusivity is not just a theoretical concept, but it's something that we can be actively implement within our organizations. So before we wrap this up, Yara already said it before, we have a stall at Hall 4.1. We'd definitely like you to visit us, engage in discussions, explore the resources that not only we have, but also that Michelle is having with the Sustainable Hospitality Alliance, Jenny with Zazane, and also Neha with Planet Abled. So look into these initiatives. Feel free to reach out whenever you have any questions. I think we're happy to answer. And once again, really heartfelt thanks to you as our panelists and the audience, and to everyone involved making this discussion, I think, a great success. Let's carry that spirit, and yeah, we'll look forward to seeing you at our stall, seeing you at our other ITB events. We are on a few stages this year. So I wish you a wonderful ITB. Stay engaged or start doing so. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ladies. From me as well, Neha, Michelle, Jenny, Katharina, and of course, Yara, who set the scene so beautifully. You are allowed to leave the stage. And I'm just going to wrap up real quick. That concludes the morning here at the Diversity and Inclusion track. I hope you have enjoyed the topics that we've discussed. It's been a phenomenal amount of work, I have to say, to actually pull this together. We've been told, for all the research that we've done here with ITB Berlin, that people really want us to engage with these topics. So please do keep us informed if you want us to continue to actually host these tracks. I certainly hope so. It's been my pleasure, and it's been fascinating to learn from everyone. One last thing to say is that on Thursday, on the future work track, on this stage, there's a lot of topics that complement what we've discussed today. So if you're still here on Thursday, please do join us. And again, thank you for being here today. Thank you all. Thank you.